I am excited to have with us today Stephanie Pitcher Fishman, who is an author and professional genealogist specializing in Midwestern and Southeastern U.S. family history. And she is the author of 7 family history research guides, maybe more by now, on topics of religious records, census records, and state specific research techniques. And she's also the co founder of the In Depth Genealogist. And I've gotten to know Stephanie a little bit better because we're also in a writing group together, Tribe Writers, Fiction Writers, and I know that she writes awesome fiction, for example, like Finding Eliza, and her newest serialized series, the first episode being called The Widow Teal, and I just love her fiction. And it's just great to have you here, Stephanie. Thanks so much for taking the time to just chat, and we can talk about storytelling and all that.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. It's nice.
Oh, well, I was just, you're a fount of wisdom when it comes to, storytelling. It just on your blog. And by the way, if you check out Stephanie, is it fishman.com or is it Stephanie?
Yes. Yes, just stephaniefishman.com.
Otherwise,
it's too long.
It's too long. Okay.
Yeah.
All these things to think about when you're setting up a blog. That's true.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you go there, you'll be able to see all of what Stephanie has written. It's just there's so much knowledge there for both storytelling in nonfiction as well as fiction. So, yeah, it's just awesome. So, do you mind if we just kind of get going, Stephanie? We'll just kind of. So, would you share your story of what inspired you to be a writer in the first place, and how you got interested in both fiction and nonfiction stories, and maybe one came first, and then the other one came later.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah.
Yeah. And I blame my parents. It's all their fault.
Okay.
And it's legitimately their fault. So, one of the things that we did, I'm a divorced kid.
Yeah.
And so I grew up going back and forth. And my dad and my bonus mom we would play games. We would do story games. And so we would sit around in circles, and when my sisters were born, and we would go person to person and have to add on and finish the story and, tie in characters. And it became this big part of just what we did to have fun. And from that point on, it seemed like stories, whether it was, hearing family stories when I got together, because my grandmother was one of 8 in, a huge Southern family. So we tended to sit around and eat and tell, family stories. Or it was with my dad, doing our story games. I was constantly encouraged to think of stories, encouraged to daydream, encouraged to write, at school. And I remember having a couple of writing assignments that, I didn't want to do. I wanted to make it sort of, my own characters. I didn't want it to be real. So I started out wanting that fiction side of it. And, being that we moved a lot, books were sort of my best friends. Mm-hmm. And so I spent a lot of time, diving into words. And then, you grow up, things happen, you've got different responsibilities, jobs come, families come, and I stopped writing. And my grandmother started getting dementia. And so I decided that we were going to write down all of her family stories, and we were going to start researching her family while she, could remember some things, and it was something that she could do. So then I sort of transitioned into writing nonfiction, and that's where sort of the love of, really digging into genealogy and writing about things that could keep it. I throw it everywhere, so I'm sure, people, if they follow me, they're sick of hearing it. But there's a Russian proverb that you live as long as you're remembered. And it's...
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. The idea that, even though, my grandmother has since passed away, I have all of these stories that I can immediately think of her.
Yes.
And feel, just feel like like I did when I was a kid, and she was telling me that. So I sort of transitioned into writing more nonfiction and writing within more of the parenting, homeschooling communities, since that was part of our world, and genealogy. And then, people have those landmark birthdays. And I was coming up on my 40th. And at the same time, I was coming up on my 40th. I was heading into what would eventually become a divorce. And my daughter was graduating, so I was no longer homeschooling her. So I'm sitting there thinking, what do I want to do? Now all of a sudden my world is completely different. Okay. And that's when a friend said, who is also an author, said, you should really look at this NaNoWriMo thing. What's NaNoWriMo? Oh, and so that's where I got my fiction back on, because it was something that I wanted to go back to, and have that. I wrote a book, and I just got bitten by the bug. So I can't, everybody says you should specialize and all of that, and I can't, because I love nonfiction as much as I love fiction. Yeah. So, to ask me to pick one would kind of be like picking between my kids, Oh, so that's why I have a tendency, to be sort of in a nonfiction phase or a fiction phase. And, I'm kind of in my nonfiction phase right now. Yeah. but I go back and forth, and I work on different things, and that way I feel whole. Yes. If I have both. So that's the story of my writing.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes. And I'm fascinated. I've glimpsed at some of your genealogy, research. Like, I think the one in the quick and easy guides for, yeah. And so you've done a lot of research, and I can totally understand, because you have a background of storytelling and, talking with your grandmother, and I can totally get why, that would be a big interest then, right? Mm-hmm. And it just brings back the memories, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you've authored these, probably more by now, but these family history research guides in the Legacy Quick Guide series, and you've also written articles and blog posts, and you've lectured on topics, relating to research and genealogy and Quaker research and that sort of thing. So now, I did notice on your blog that you have the free mini course that people can sign up for. Yes. Called 5 Days to Family Stories. So, yes. So if someone was listening and was interested in telling kind of, well, maybe either a memoir or a biography of one of their family members, or writing a theme based maybe on family history, where would you suggest they start, and what kind of tips would you give them?
Well, of course, I love the mini course that I'm doing. Yes. So I think because in that I sort of go through, I think that when you're looking at family history writing, one of the things that a lot of people don't really think of is to sort of marry the fiction techniques along with, even if it's nonfiction, you can do a creative nonfiction blend and still look at the characters and look at the setting. And so for me, the very first thing is write down the stories that you think either inspire you, or, if you're looking to go into fiction, or the stories that you want to include, if you're doing a collection of family stories, or if you're writing about a specific ancestor. And it's the fun thing about doing it from a family story perspective is that you can choose. I want to watch my words here. You can choose to make it research based, and that's fine. There's no right way or wrong way. But I think it's also more approachable for people who don't have that background. Yes. In genealogy, in family history research, to deal with. If you start throwing out, document sets and archives information and, citations and all, it gets overwhelming, and it gets heavy and dry sometimes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so to think of it from that story perspective, that your ancestor is a character. We all have characters in our family. Yeah. Yeah. I know everybody's a character. So just start writing down the things that you remember, even if it's, a little note too. I'm really big on not staring at a blank piece of paper, even if you just have to write notes to talk to somebody about a story,
Yeah.
or to, go back and maybe you think that you can't remember something, so you want to make a note to go back and look at photo albums, because there are so many things that can be sparked off by looking at pictures. And, we've got our memories are so tied to the visual or to scents or to, certain sounds. So I would definitely start there. Write your stuff down, and then when you're comfortable, start my mini course.
Yes.
Come
Oh,
see
and
me.
I can attest that it's awesome because it's very simplified. So someone, even me, I can understand. I can understand sort of chatting with family members and asking them questions, and just sort of it sort of feels like you're sitting across the kitchen table, you're having a cup of coffee, and you're just asking about, okay, so I mean this happened, but can you tell me, how it started, or you're just
Yeah.
just normal conversations that families have, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, and I think that when you look at it from the perspective of the story and who's in it,
Yeah.
sometimes it's a little easier to take a step back. And then we see these people not just as, that was grandpa who used to bring me candy, or that was grandma that, would toss a coin at me when I came over.
Yeah.
They become, yeah, they become real people who dealt with, the death of a child, or,
Yes.
these things that we struggle with now. It puts sort of a layer of humanity
Yeah.
on them. And then, if you choose to, I'm a big proponent of telling stories your way, because this is a personal project. There's no right or wrong way, to express this. And so, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, or creative nonfiction, go with something that's comfortable, and really, like you said, dig in and have the conversations and just enjoy it, and it'll flow. It'll come out.
No, that's really good. Yes. Well, and that's I know there's a few people that have asked me already, so I'm going to refer them to, this podcast. But
Thank you.
about telling their family stories, and that actually brings me on to one question that's not actually on my list of questions. But
Mhm.
what would you tell someone who, say, they're writing like either a biography or like a memoir or something like that,
Mhm.
and so say they're coming up with, you know, they're finding memories that are maybe aren't so nice about someone
Yeah.
in their family line. How
Yeah.
how how do you handle that?
It's a very sensitive thing. And it's something that everybody has at some
Yeah.
point in their family. I think that early on, you need to decide, sort of a walkthrough of what you're going to do if you run into something like that.
Yeah.
And typically, I personally take a look at whether or not there are people still alive that are close to that person.
Oh, okay.
It's very different for me to tell a story about, I don't know, that had been handed down,
Yeah.
about, my great grandfather who passed away in the 40s, versus, my grandfather who just passed away, a number of years ago, like 10 years ago. So I think you have to look at who's going to be affected
Yeah.
by the words.
Okay.
If the story's about someone living, I would hesitate to tell it, unless you have permission or you let them know that you're going to include it. It's different, if you're dealing with something within your life that is removed from that person. But if it's someone you have a relationship with,
Yeah.
I would definitely suggest talking to them, and sort of think about it as a spider web.
Yeah.
You're going to start, but there are all of these little lines, or a wagon wheel, the spoke.
Yeah.
When you tell that story, it's going to branch out.
Yeah.
And so who is it going to affect? and then I would decide whether or not you're going to put it in. Or maybe there's a way that you can tell it that's a little more sensitive to whatever the subject matter is.
Yeah.
But, or you can hide it in fiction like I did, with Finding Eliza. I have a few little things in there that are, I don't think, recognizable. I've talked to some people in my family, and when I told them that I kind of hid some, based some things loosely on some things in our family, they were like, really? I didn't know that. But they knew the story and they knew the book.
Yeah.
But you sort of wrap it in things and change it a little bit in fiction,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's excellent tips, because that is true. I like the picture of the spiderweb, because that's true, because there's many people in families, and then like distant, so like aunts, uncles, cousins, and then second cousins, and you don't know who.
Yes,
it is like a spider web, really.
It is. It is. And I mean, and something that could be, I know stories in some, with some family members that they've passed away, but their children are still alive. And if I were to do anything to tell some of these, it would be hurtful to them. And it also wouldn't give, I think you also have to decide, does it give a full picture of, the broad spectrum of that person's life, or does it color it and make them seem like something that they aren't, So I think it fits in with, you also have to look and see how it represents the person that you're writing about.
Oh, okay. So giving both, not just like going on and on about about like, some maybe not so positive, but also giving a full. Yeah, that totally makes sense. A full like
Yeah.
positive, and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because we all have that. We all have tough times. We all have things that I'm sure, we would look back and think, I wish I could have done that a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And if you gave that snippet, it could, I guess, mislead people to think, have a different view. So, I mean, it's really, but like I said, it's a very personal project. So there are no real rules. It's just what feels right to you and your family.
Yeah. No, that's really good and really helpful. Thanks, Stephanie. I
I hope
never
it was.
really know what to tell people. So that's really good.
Oh, good. I'm glad it helped.
So, I mean, so you do write fiction stories, and I love both your Finding Eliza and The Widow Teal. You have actually a real knack for exposing deep secrets and lies in your characters, right? And I know I actually really love reading those kinds of stories, because I like to see, okay, so what's going to happen now? Now we know what the lie is, or what the secrets are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to happen now, right? And you also mix it with history and suspense, so that all these twisty, turny things, and you bring it around to a powerful story ending, with the characters transformed. And like in Finding Eliza, there's a strong theme of forgiveness, right? Mm-hmm. And so would you talk about your process of how you go about getting your ideas, and how you dig deeper, I guess, into the main character arc and the themes of your stories?
It's, some of it isn't always planned. Some of it, your story kind of takes you into one place or another. But I have a tendency to hear a story, or see something in the news, or talk to someone and hear about a scenario, and it'll spark an idea, because relationships are very big for me.
Yes.
I am a people person that's also an introvert sometimes. But so I have a tendency to always have that inner monologue of, well, what would they do and what would they say? And, you go through, it's almost like going through the process of the who, when, where, that you learn in school. Yeah. I start thinking, where would they go and what would they do and who would they interact with?
Yeah.
And then I just sort of build on that and see what if it were me, how would I feel in a situation, or how would I, and then by building those characters,
Yeah.
then I can sort of pick up on what my theme might be. And then I just keep going. But 9 out of 10 times where I think I'm going to go isn't always where I end up.
Okay.
So, yeah.
No, that's great. So it sounds like maybe you let the characters kind of speak to you as you're writing.
Yeah, and I let the story kind of guide. I try to be a plotter. I want desperately to be one.
Yeah.
The story beats idea, with Platt and Truant and, all of that works great for me. They don't always stick, but to be able to sort of, pinpoint some almost like highway signs, road signs along the way. But as long as pretty much the characters are what I actually build out, I don't really build out and plan the story so much. So I throw words on a page. And I picked up, I think it's because of NaNoWriMo.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Just getting that mindset of it doesn't have to be good, it just has to be done.
Yeah.
For the first draft, and so I just start throwing words on a page, and I just keep going, and I don't second guess myself. I try not to. I try to sort of bind and gag the inner editor and shove her in the corner. And so sometimes I can get lost in it.
Yeah.
And just kind of see where it goes.
Oh, that's great. No, that's well, and obviously it's working because your stories they just I love the twists and the turns in the character and how they have to almost get to that bottom. Sometimes in life we get to the bottom, right? Where we're feeling like we are just right, with the goop, and we're having to understand ourselves, and so that makes sense then in a character, right, to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's very to understand ourselves. That when you hit on that, I can look back at everything that I've written, and I can see. Obviously I know when I did it, but to read.
Yeah.
I can pinpoint, I felt like that because, so-and-so died.
Oh,
or
okay.
I felt like that because, I was going through my divorce.
Yeah.
Or, I can see some of the emotions that I was having pop up in a character.
Yeah.
And I remember the scene in Finding Eliza where Lizzie's basically pitching her fit, outside.
Yeah.
And she's stomping around. She's mad. The day that I wrote that, I had a day where I was done being an adult.
Yeah.
I was done with the situation. I didn't like where, things were going, and I was just over it, and I was mad at the world. And I started, because I had to get my words down, for Nano, I had to get them done. And I started writing, and just before I knew it, she was pitching a fit. My grandmother would have told me she was acting real ugly. So it all came out. But
well, and sometimes I think a lot of ways, writing is like that. It's like a cathartic sort of thing when you can write things down and how you're feeling, even when you're at that point in that day when you are either whatever it is, if you're unhappy or if you're just madder than heck, or
or you're happy with everything and you feel like you've overcome something and you're strong, or it all kind of fits in. And I think fiction and nonfiction help us sort of work out that what's going on, like talking about family stories. Sometimes you can work out whether there's a disconnect with someone, or you're missing someone. That I think can be very therapeutic. And then fiction, you sort of get your own stuff out if you need to. It's sort of the I don't know, the way of journaling it without getting in trouble because no one knows it's you.
No, that's good. That's good. No, that's really great. lots of great tips there. So, just sort of switching to, so we kind of talked about, fiction, but with nonfiction, do you kind of weave in? I mean, you did kind of mention that, but to weave in real history into your fiction stories, like what's your process of how you do that? I'm just curious.
I fell in love when I was doing really heavily involved in research. I fell in love with researching social history.
Oh, okay.
And, really getting a picture of not just, dates on a page and the specific little details like that you can pull out of the typical records, the birth, marriage, death records that people go to. And so I started looking at, county histories where people would talk about, the barn dance or the sledding hill or the really bad flood that year. And I love historical newspapers. I'm so addicted to old newspapers. It's not even funny. It's like crack to me. It's horrible. And I could go and sit with a microfilm reader and just get lost and read old articles, and it's a sickness. So I started doing that with my research. And so when I write, whether it's, a nonfiction based on someone and more of in the creative nonfiction realm, or whether it's fiction, I want to know, well, what was the weather like that day?
Yeah.
Or what did the town look like? Who was milling around in the diner? Did you have, I don't know, that fake little line in town where these people didn't want to talk to these people, or, was there struggle, or what was life like? And so I tend to watch documentaries of the time period. I load up my playlists with music of the time period that I'm writing in.
Oh, that's great. What a great idea.
Oh, it gets me, in that mindset. And I really try to look at language and what people would say and sort of weave it in so that it feels, it gives a better picture, I think, of how, you can understand the life. It's because it all goes back to story and understanding, the human experience and what it was like at that time.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love those such great tips, because it just, it's like you're delving in deeper and you're bringing the world around so you feel like you're actually there, which is awesome, right?
Yes. And that's the one, I guess the thing that I have easier than like someone who would write fantasy and you're creating worlds.
Oh,
My
yeah.
world is always already created. I just have to go find it.
Yeah.
I just have to do some research, do some Googling, hit up Spotify. And so that's already done. I just have to find it.
Yeah.
Put it together. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
But
great.
it helps me. It helps me get sort of like get in the mood for it, get in that world and get submerged. So
Yeah, no, I can see that would really help. Yeah. So you have worked on collaborating with other authors, like with actually both nonfiction and with fiction. So would you talk about your process with nonfiction as far as talking through ideas and outlining them, and then talk about how it is with fiction, and maybe, I don't know if they're different. I'm just thinking, if there's writers listening who are considering collaborating, maybe there's some tips you can maybe pass on.
I think it's really important to work with somebody that you have sort of a good relationship with, a good rapport with.
Yeah.
It's not. Methods do matter, how people write, making sure that you work out something that works for both of you. But I think more so it's the relationship that the two of you have. And I think it's really important to know and have that common goal, that common vision for where you want to end up. And because then outlining is extremely important, but then you can really move through the bumps and the hurdles if you work well together and you're going in the same direction, you know.
Yeah.
So, fiction, I've done more compilations and anthologies.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
mhm,
So
so
that
that
means
was
you're
fun.
writing your own story in a larger book.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Like we would have a common theme. We would decide on themes. And interestingly enough, the same thing like with Shutterstep, we had a picture that we used. So sort
Okay.
of give us the visual, and we had a song that we would
Oh, a
listen
song
to, you know.
too.
Yeah. And so everybody had the same picture and the same song, and we had sort of the same feel, the same theme, but no one wrote anything, you know, close to each other. It was really interesting to see how everybody sort of came out of that and interpreted it, and we all you know, we would talk about it, and we all had it on replay, and we would listen to the song over and over and over, you know. And
That's
yes.
interesting, though. That's a neat way to do it.
And that one's free on Amazon. You can get that one on Amazon for free. So checking, you know, there's Stacy Claflin, I'm going to get tongue tied, Christine Royce Niles, me, Dee Dee Nesbitt,
Okay. Yeah.
and I am horribly embarrassed because I'm forgetting somebody, Andrea Johnson Beck.
Okay.
And yeah, so we were different genres, and
Yeah.
that's, I think, very fun to work with people that write in different genres.
Yes.
It was interesting.
Yeah. No, that does make it fun. Boy, that sounds exciting. At some point, I think that would be. I'd like to do that too. So I'm curious.
We'll have to talk.
Yes. No, that's just really fun. It's just fascinating to see. You know, who was I listening to? I was listening to. I think Simon Whistler on
Yeah.
Rocking Self-Publishing.
Rocking Self.
The one gal was saying she was collaborating with a bunch of other gals, and they just had one character that was the same in all of them, and it was the matchmaker character, because they all write romance. And so it had the same matchmaker character, but then each one would write a different story. And so I thought that was fascinating.
That's neat. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Yeah, no, I think so. So there's probably different ways a person can, you know, because you guys used a picture and a song. You know, you could use a character. You know, there's different ways you can, yeah. But
Or a
that's fun.
setting. You know, you could use a setting that's the same.
Yeah.
You could, yeah. There's a lot of ways that you could do it, and so I think if you work well with those people, you have a good. I shouldn't say work well, but if you know, have a good rapport and a good whether you're friends or whether you're new to working with each other, and you just have that, you know, relaxed feel with each other. I think that's when you know it's a good fit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Wow. That's great. I love talking about that. So, yeah, no, it's really good. So, you know, I've had the privilege of getting to know you a little better, Stephanie, in you know, on Facebook with our little group there, Tri British Fiction Writers, and I know that there's some days where maybe you're not feeling well enough to write. Do you mind sharing with people listening, and especially those who maybe struggle with, you know, kind of feeling off on some days, maybe they're sick, or, you know, so how they can keep writing and keep steady at it, even if every day is, you know, you're kind of living in pain. Is there sort of, you know, some tips you have? And the other question I wanted to ask you is, do you have friends or family that are kind of, you know, encourage you, or accountability partners, or that sort of thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. I have fibromyalgia
Yeah.
and arthritis, and so I deal with, especially this time of year, you know, in fall and winter,
Okay.
it's a little worse, and so I have some days that are absolutely fabulous, and you wouldn't know it, but then I may have flare-ups that can last a little while. And those days, sometimes it's hard to write because it's not only not feeling like sitting up or, you know, having my hands hurt and not wanting to write. It's that when I deal with that pain, I don't feel creative, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. I don't
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't feel creative. So those are actually more the days that I jot down notes or I do research.
Okay.
Or, I know that I need to learn about a specific topic, or a specific setting, and I'll spend more time, doing that. And it helps me stay with whatever the project is that I'm working on because I'm doing something.
Yeah.
But it might not be that specific thing. So I would just say, make sure that, you spend, even if you can't do it every day, at least, 3 or 4 times a week. Just try to, if you're dealing with illness or with illness in the family, maybe it's not you, maybe you're a caregiver. Right. I would do something that keeps you inspired, like listen to podcasts like this.
Yeah.
And just write notes, if that's all that you can manage is to spit out 150 words of, notes to remind you to do something later. That's something.
Yeah.
And be proud. You have to celebrate every little victory.
Yeah. And
that's a win. So that's one thing that I've learned, with a lot of the ladies and gents and Tribe Writers, fiction writers, they've really become my support. And I do have a local friend here that is also a genealogist, and she writes nonfiction, and Amy Johnson Crow she's actually in the group too.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, she's local to me, and we've been friends for a couple of years. Oh. And so she and I check in every morning. What are you doing? What's the plan? And we can keep each other motivated like that. And Christine Roy-Stiles, she is a big one for me that helps me. And I think that having someone that knows your goals, it's important because they can gently keep you on that path when you don't feel like being on that path, And my family is thankfully I'm blessed. They're wildly supportive, and my mother and my daughter and my boyfriend are like, go team, constantly. Yeah. So it's do something little every day. Do something that inspires you and makes you, even when you can't be creative, something that's telling you can be creative, and surround yourself with people that. That those days are going to come, just like in anything, in parenting, in jobs, in any situation, you've got those hard days. And so knowing that it's normal, and it's going to be there. And then the days that I really were the days, weeks that you really struggle. I caught myself thinking one time that I was just going to quit. Nobody was reading my books. What's the point? I can't come up with, something that people are going to enjoy. And I wasn't feeling creative because I didn't feel good. I was just going to be done. I was going to quit. And my friend said, well, are you going to take your stuff down on Amazon, off Amazon and off? What are you going to do? Are you just going to make it go away? And then it's like, well, but I spent months, years, I don't want to make it go away. And then I started thinking, if I make it go away, I'm just, these are my people. They might be fake, but they're my people. Yeah. And that sort of turned me around. So now whenever I have that doubt, like You know, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't, why are people asking me? Because I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this. I kind of go back to that. Well, is it time to throw them away? I don't want to throw them away. Well, then I know I need to just sort of get up and figure out a way to get through.
Yeah.
And,
So kind of figuring out your why, that's kind of an important part for whether it's nonfiction probably or fiction.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think so. Because even though what we write on, and the techniques that we use are different, in nonfiction and fiction, everybody comes from the same place. Everybody's pouring their heart and soul into their work.
Yeah.
And everybody's still, dealing with all of the art of writing. I'm trying to think, So there's that common ground, but so I think that definitely it's knowing your why and having somebody that'll, encourage or kick you in the butt, and finding that thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. And go back to it. It's okay to find that, like, I use that same mind trick every single time, and it works. So I'm not going to throw it out.
No, if it works.
If it works, keep it and keep doing it. And, and sometimes it's as simple as writing on a piece of paper, or a Post-it note, or, putting tape across your mirror. So the first thing that you see in the morning is your why. That's anything that you need to do to remind yourself. I used to write notes everywhere on my calendar, because I would look at my planner. It's never far from me, and so I'll write little things to remember what it is I want to do, and why it is I love it. So,
well, that's really great. Yeah, there is something about keeping your why in front of you, right? Or at least when you are feeling like you were saying, like when you're feeling like quitting and having a really bad day, as usually one of the first questions we ask ourselves, right, is, okay, why am I doing this again?
Exactly.
So, yeah, no, that's really good.
And I'm really big on tricks like that. Find the trick that helps you, think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, exactly. That keeps you going, right? Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good. So would you give us a glimpse into upcoming projects or books you're working on right now, or new releases that you have coming out, or?
I am behind on The Widow Teal. I'm behind on my due date, on my date for that. But hopefully that will be coming up in the next couple of months. And I'm also working on my own story, my own books. Not my story, but my own book of family stories that I'm getting my mom to tell and talk with me about. And so I want to really, I have some good lessons. My grandmother would use them, to teach us something. And so I have that collection that I want to work on. That's sort of I'm full of personal projects right now. I have slayingfibro.com is a passion project for me. And I'm working on a nonfiction to share the experiences. We talked a little bit about that, and to share the experiences of people going through it. And then I'm planning on, in 2016, I'll have another course coming out for family stories that will be more in depth and include some workshops and some video things, and that'll be fun. And then some more fiction that's probably tied to finding Eliza, and
awesome.
Blue's going to get her own book.
Okay.
So I get to pull out my snarky old lady, and throw her in. And so it's going to be, again, wildly different, the Fibro family stories and finding Eliza, basically. But they all have that common ground of it's all based in people. And in relationships. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Oh,
that's
that
what I'm
sounds like
working on.
fun.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
Oh, that's
It's
great.
the hard part's trying to focus on which one,
Yeah, no,
is going to come out
exactly.
first.
Yeah. Well, and I want to encourage people too, because I've been going through your free mini course, the 5 days to family stories. I just because I really believe that'll help with people that are writing, yes, a memoir or a biography, but it also gives you glimpses into how people are, and it helps you with your fiction. I really believe that,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's so
Yeah. I hope
tied
so.
together, right? We're inspired by people's lives, right? And yeah, we might call them a different name because
Right.
but in our characters, but we're inspired by
Yes.
you know true stories.
Exactly, exactly. And because that's how, we pull all of those pieces together to make a character that's well-rounded that people can connect with. And so we're creating characters that could be real, that are, like you said, based in experiences that we've had or people that we've met.
Yeah,
And so it all ties together.
yeah. Oh, that's really great. Well, Stephanie, do you mind just telling people where they can find you and your books or courses online?
Everything is at stephaniefishman.com. And if you're interested in any of the fibro related, encouragement and support, that's slayingfibro.com. And I'm over on Twitter as Steph P Fishman. But all those links are at stephaniefishman.com, and you can sign up, for newsletters where I give out some goodies and do some things, get some extra books. You can get on my launch team and get access to everything, which is kind of fun, and join me on Facebook in a readers group. But that link is also on the website. So the readers group is really fun. I would encourage anybody who likes books and characters to look up my group on Facebook. It's SPF for Readers.
Okay.
And I actually have a story that I jokingly called it Mad Libs for Adults, because I would throw out like a sentence or a snippet, and then ask people, well, who should die, or what should we put in it, or
That's
what,
awesome.
what should we do? And it's turned into, it's built into the story that I've got people they're like, when are we going to finish it? And, I call it With Love, Your Dead Aunt. So it's all about a woman who inherits her very eccentric dead aunt's home. And it's filled with, it's filled with lots of little oddities
Okay.
and taxidermy animals and, you know, really odd things. And so it's fun because we get to play. So anybody who likes words and likes characters can come play with me at SPF for Readers on Facebook.
Oh, awesome. Love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. And yes, readers are into things that are different and right. They want to be intrigued and
Mhm.
inspired. So it's awesome.
And then they can be involved, and
Exactly.
they tell me what to write, and so then I go write it, and then I put it in, and it's time for another chapter. I need to get on that and put out another chapter for them, and I can't go to the
Sort of like
store.
Wattpad on Facebook.
It is. It's sort of like Wattpad. And instead of just me writing and getting their feedback on what they like, I'm getting ideas from them. I'm tossing out a scenario,
Yeah.
or at the end of the chapter, I'll say, okay, now, who do you want to see, or what do you want to do? Where are they going to go? What are we going to find? And it's interesting to have the things that people pop up, and then it's I find myself writing longer if someone says, why don't you throw in an airplane? Or why don't you throw in, we had a stuffed squirrel. and that stuffed squirrel created this whole home that has, animals everywhere. So it's fun. It's really fun. That's my downtime writing.
Yeah.
my non-deadline, I just want to remember how much fun writing
That's
is
awesome.
kind of project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
as writers, we need that. We need to have, if other times aren't fun, there has to be fun. You have to somehow get into a
Yeah.
fun, otherwise writing becomes a drudgery and you don't want that.
Exactly, exactly. And I've never been good at, writing to writers, to prompts. Like, oh, I'm going to practice to this prompt. I'm not very good at that. Um, but this is where I can sort of stretch and create this outlandish kind of stuff because I'm not thinking about an editor's deadline or,
Yeah.
any of that. It's just, and it'll come out. We'll finish it
Yeah.
and it'll come out hopefully I'm sure everybody I have people sending me messages that they want to get going on it. So if I can get it done with everything else, hopefully that will come out next year too. But
Oh, that'd be awesome.
yeah, but it's fun. But every single chapter that we've already done is there.
Yeah.
So you can join the group and you can grab the PDF and read all the, all of the shenanigans of her and her friend who are very, I like snarky characters, apparently. I'm very sarcastic in this one. So,
Nothing wrong with that. I kind of like that. It makes you laugh and it's kind of fun.
yeah. 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 I'll have to make sure that you get a copy of it. It's my release. It's my fun.
Oh, that's
So that's another thing. When you're having a tough time, find something that's fun.
exactly. No, that's good.
Find a project that's fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Stephanie. This has been awesome. It's been so good to sort of get your perspective on writing, on storytelling, and just to kind of learn from, because you kind of have done so well with both nonfiction and fiction, and so it's
Thank
really
you.
good to get sort of dig deeper into how you write your stories. And so, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. I had fun.
Yes,
This was
no,
good.
this was fun.
Thank you so much, and thank you for what you do and how you get people talking. It's
Oh,
good.
awesome.